When we think about the problems facing America's social safety net, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, what if they aren't an accident? According to one former insider, it's all the result of a deliberate, decades-long plan. Let's break that theory down.
So this is the bombshell claim, right? It's coming from a former Social Security manager. The argument is that a plan, almost 100 years in the making, is just now hitting its endgame. I mean, that's a pretty wild statement, and it completely reframes how we look at these programs. So what in the world is this plan?
To get to the bottom of it, we have to look at what the source calls this multi-decade strategy, one that was designed to completely reshape America's social safety net, but from the inside out.
Okay, so to really get this theory, we've got to rewind the clock a bit, back to when these programs first started. Right from the get-go, we're talking way back in 1935 when Social Security kicked off, and then again in '65 with Medicare and Medicaid. Our source argues there's always been a powerful group of people who just did not like them. But here's the thing. These programs became super popular. They really wove themselves into American life, supporting everyone from the elderly and children to the disabled and the poor.
So what do you do when you can't just attack these things directly, because pretty much everyone loves them? Well, according to the source, a few decades back, a new, much sneakier strategy started to take shape. It's like a backdoor approach to get something done that a frontal assault never could. And that right there brings us to the real heart of this argument, this supposed two-step playbook designed to get a job done indirectly because doing it directly was impossible.
So here's the playbook, and it's actually pretty simple. Step 1, you rack up massive national debt. Think huge tax cuts, big boosts in military spending. Then comes step 2. You turn around and use that very same debt as a weapon. You say, look, we're broke. We have no choice but to cut these social programs.
And this is where the source points out what seems like a major contradiction. When big banks or corporations are in trouble, too big to fail, all of a sudden money just appears. It's miraculously found. But when we talk about the social safety net, suddenly that national debt becomes this impossible wall that forces us to make these really painful cuts.
So what's the endgame here? What's the point of all this? The source is pretty blunt about it. It's about changing the whole system from the ground up. This quote says it all. It's a backdoor way to eventually privatize Social Security.
Okay, so how do you sell these cuts to the public? Well, you use a very powerful, very familiar phrase: fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, the source admits, sure, there's some fraud in any huge system, but they argue that the scale of it gets blown way out of proportion to get everybody on board with defunding these programs, kind of like the final piece of that two-step plan.
All right, so that's the big picture theory, the political playbook. But what does this actually look like on the ground? For real people who are just trying to get the benefits they need. How does that affect them? Let's dig into a real-world case. Picture this. Someone retires, they've got health insurance through their spouse's retirement plan, seems fine, right? But then they're told they have to sign up for Medicare Part B or they'll get hit with penalties down the road. Why? It all comes down to one really confusing bit of jargon. And that term is creditable coverage. See, if you have insurance from a job you're currently working, that usually counts. But insurance from a retirement plan? A lot of the time that doesn't. It's such a tiny, tricky distinction that's not always clear, and it ends up trapping a lot of people. Okay, here's another one for you straight from the source's Q&A. A woman was married for 38 years. Her own Social Security check is about $1,000 a month, but her ex-husband's is way higher. You'd think she could claim some benefits based on his record, right? Nope. She's told she can't. So what's going on?
Well, it's because the rules are just incredibly complicated, and it all hinges on one simple fact. Is the ex-spouse alive or not? If he's living, her own benefit has to be less than half of his for her to claim anything. But if that same ex-spouse passes away, she could get up to 100% of his benefit. It's a huge difference, and most people have no idea until it's way too late. So remember that whole public story about fraud and waste? People taking too much from the system? The source argues we're focused on the wrong thing. They point to a totally different kind of waste, one that completely flips that story upside down. $30 billion. That is a massive number. According to a study that our source points to, that's how much in benefits goes unclaimed every single year. We're talking about money that eligible people who really need it, just aren't getting.
And here's the kicker. The source argues this isn't an accident. It's not because people suddenly don't need the money.
It's because the system itself is just a maze of hoops, barriers, and tripwires that make it almost impossible for some people to navigate.
I mean, think about it. Super complicated forms, hidden deadlines you don't know about, people just not being aware of the programs in the first place, and even getting bad advice from the official agencies themselves. All these things add up to that unbelievable $30 billion number.
So after all that, where does it leave us? Well, it really comes down to two totally different stories, two competing ideas about why our social safety net seems to be struggling.
Right, on the one hand, you've got what we can call the fraud narrative. The problem from this point of view is that claimants are taking too much. They're abusing the system, so the solution is obvious. Cut benefits, tighten the rules. But on the other side, you have the barrier narrative that our source presents. Here, the problem isn't abuse, it's access. The system is just too darn hard to use. The solution? Don't cut it, simplify it.
And that really brings us to the final, and I think most provocative question of all. Is all this mind-numbing complexity just an accident, a bug in the system? Or, as the source we've been looking at suggests, could it actually be a feature designed this way on purpose?